Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this roundtable on computer-assisted materials alchemy. My name is Stefano Baroni. I am professor of Theoretical Condensed-Matter Physics at SISSA, here uphill in Officina. SISSA is probably the main hub of computational material science in Italy, and one of the main in Europe and worldwide. SISSA is the home of a big project for high-performance scientific software for materials modeling, for quantum mechanical materials modeling named Quantum Espresso. Because of its role in the international community of materials modeling, SISSA is part of many national and international networks, starting from the MAX European Center of Excellence for Supercomputing Applications, led by Professor Molinari, will tell us probably something about it, and the National Center for High Performance Computing, Big Data, and Quantum Computing, established recently in the framework of the Italian PNRR. So this is more or less what I wanted to say about myself and the institution I belong to. I will now move to a brief introduction of the speakers of this roundtable in the order they will speak. Starting from Nicola Marzari on my right. Nicola was educated in Trieste. He got a master's degree in physics here at the University of Trieste, and a PhD in physics at the University of Cambridge in the UK. He presently holds the chair of Theory and Simulation of Materials at the École Polytechnique Fédérale in Lausanne, where he directs the Center for Computational Design and Discovery of Novel Materials called Marvel, and also the Laboratory for Materials Simulation at the Paul Scherrer Institute in Villingen in Switzerland. He also holds a chair of excellence at the University of Bremen in Germany. Prior to his present posts, he held a chair of theoretical material science at MIT in Cambridge, USA, and the statutory chair of materials modeling at the University of Oxford. So next in line, in order of their talks in this roundtable is Carlo Cavazzoni, Dr. Carlo Cavazzoni, next to Elisa Molinari. He was educated in Modena, where he got a master's degree in physics, and here at SISSA, where he got a PhD in computational materials physics. He's now senior vice-president of Cloud Computing at Leonardo, at the Leonardo company, formerly known as Finmeccanica, and head of the Leonardo Lab for High Performance Computing. Prior to this, he has been for more than 20 years head of scientific users support at Cineca, at the Cineca Supercomputing Center in Bologna, and the responsible of many European initiatives therein. He's member of the advisory board of EuroHPC, which is the body who decides the European policies in high-performance computing, the board of directors of ETP4HPC, as well as a Leonardo representative in the Gaia-X initiatives. Ivano Tavernelli at the extreme right, your extreme left of the table, was educated in ETH Zurich, where he got 2 master's degrees in biochemistry and theoretical physics, and also a PhD in physics therein. He's now senior research staff member at the IBM laboratories in Rushlikon in the Zurich area, where he leads a research group on the applications of quantum computing technologies in the natural sciences, with emphasis on molecular and material sciences and fault-tolerant near-term algorithms. Prior to IBM, he held the position of Maître of Teaching and Research at the École Polytechnique Fédérale in Lausanne, and a postdoctoral prior to that, a postdoctoral fellowship at the University of Cambridge in UK. Last in line, the closing talk will be given by Professor Elisa Molinari, who graduated in physics at the University of Modena. She's professor of Theoretical Condensed-Matter Physics therein, and she's also the leader of the Nanoscience Institute of CNR in Modena. Prior to this, she has done research in several major European centers in Stuttgart, Grenoble, and Rome. She's presently the director of MAX, which I have already mentioned, the MAX Center of Excellence for Supercomputing Applications. A leading scientist in computational materials research, she has been serving in international scientific and policymaking panels on nanomaterials and production technologies, as well as she has been a member of Euro HPC directing bodies. So this is more or less a brief introduction of the speakers of today. I will start from Nicola Marzari, and I would ask him how he sees the future impact, the present and future impact of computational technologies on the discovery and design of new materials. So up to now, up to the present time, materials have been discovered more or less fortuitously, yet they have had an impact on the way of life of different historical eras and geographical areas. So, Nicola, how is it that this serendipity will be replaced by a rational design of materials with new custom designed properties? How will computers help in this goal?
Thanks, Stefano. By the way, very, very happy to be here, and thanks for the invitation. And clearly a topic that I love. And so maybe we can, go back a little bit in time, thinking what has been done in the past. And we have a few examples that I find interesting. One is the light bulb. Luckily, we don't use light bulbs anymore. They are, wildly inefficient, but, for 100 years, they've changed our way of living. And that was Edison in Edison, New Jersey, appropriately named. And, he spent a few years trying out everything to be used as a filament for, what was in his idea, the light bulb. And so he tried 10,000, 20,000 materials. He tried a lot of vegetables and to see if they could work. And even he used The first time I was actually carbonized sewing thread, and it was not the tungsten filament that was used years later and was part of the lightning technology. So, that was the Edisonian method. Try a lot of things, and maybe the greatest success of the Edisonian method came in the 1910s, 1920s. We were discussing this in a different forum yesterday. It's when Fritz Haber discovered the catalyst to make ammonia from nitrogen in the atmosphere. And that has been revolutionary because we need large quantities of ammonia basically to feed the world. We make fertilizer out of ammonia, and we wouldn't be able to sustain 8 billion people without fertilizer. And if you look deep inside yourself, half of the nitrogen in your body, for better or for worse, has been made with the Haber-Bosch process. Now, there is also, what I call intelligent design. You're a scientist, maybe you're a solid-state chemist, and you want to try and find new batteries, and you understand that, transition metal oxides could be very good systems, and a very good ion to shuttle around in a battery is lithium, and you put all this knowledge together, and you basically came out with lithium-ion batteries that were actually invented in Oxford in the 1970s, and then Sony first commercialized in 1991. So these are all examples of materials that have changed our lives for better most of the times, sometimes for worse. The question of Stefano is, what is happening now? And I think two very important things that are in the theme of this meeting today are coming out. One is that we have very powerful supercomputers, and in the past 30 years, also very much thanks to the effort that have been taking place in Italy, especially here in Trieste, in Modena, in Rome, there have been a great conceptual advances, theoretical advances, algorithmic advances that have made it possible, computational science, and in particular, computational quantum mechanics. When Stefano mentioned quantum espresso before, what we are talking is about an open source computational code that is, the equivalent of a major research infrastructure. You hear about synchrotrons, you hear about telescopes, out in deep space. Well, here you have something that is an infrastructure that is equivalent of this, but it allows you to calculate and predict the properties of materials, basically by solving the quantum mechanics equation. We are lucky, so from 1925 onwards, we actually have a theory of electrons interacting in atoms, molecules, and solids. So we have the theory, and what we have tried and now we are successful at is solving this theory and actually predicting material properties. And the nice thing is that these days we can predict these properties in a lot of cases, but not in all. And so there is an entire discussion about what are the limits and what we could do. But let's focus for a moment on what we can do. We can predict material properties without doing an experiment on a computer. And that changes completely the paradigm. That is, it changes the way you do research, because rather than having a physical facility, now you have a computational facility. And a computational facility improves at the speed of information and communication technologies. For the past 30 years, every 16 months, the throughput capacity of supercomputers has doubled. So if I leave today, I go on holiday, I come back in 16 months, my computational laboratory is twice as good. That doesn't happen with a physical facility. And that's why these days we can actually calculate the materials properties of hundreds of thousands of materials. The other beautiful thing, and quantum espresso again, I think is a startling example, is all this research is open source. So not only I can calculate, state-of-the-art material properties with these tools, but my friends and colleagues in Kigali, Rwanda can do the same things. Friends and colleagues in Brazil, in South Africa, in Australia, in China, in the United States, in Berkeley. So everywhere we can use the same infrastructure. So it's not only the acceleration that is paradigm shifting, but is also the open access that is paradigm shifting. And we do this a lot to find materials that do interesting and generally useful stuff. We look for novel cathode materials for batteries that would contain more energy, or that have solid state electrolytes so they don't explode in flight or while you're driving, new superconductors, new materials for information and communication technologies, new photovoltaics, and so on and so forth. And I'll conclude just in the last minute. The question is, will we keep improving? I mean, we are lucky, that is, we have been sitting on, I would say, 150 years of, scientific research and technological innovation that brings us more and more powerful capabilities. But at the end, we do live in a real world. We are made of carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and hydrogen. The materials that we use are made of lithium, cobalt, manganese, iron. So sometimes these elements are limited. Do we have enough lithium for all the needs that we want? And maybe we'll never find also solutions that we want. Will we ever have batteries that have 5 times the energy density that we have now? Maybe yes, and maybe not. And so we are, I think, at a very interesting time where this computational tool, completely change our way of doing research. And, we'll discover there will be areas where there are major breakthroughs, and there will be areas also where we are stuck for good. And maybe we have to rethink our actually way of using technologies in our daily lives, because we have actually reached a plateau of what we can do. Hope it was not too long, but thanks, Stefano, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Nicola, for the enlightening introduction. I propose that we move on with short talks, more or less of the same length as Nicola's, and we exploit the remaining the time that will be left for an open discussion, initially led by the speakers themselves, who may want to ask questions to each other, and then gradually open to you guys in the audience. So the next speaker of this session is Carlo Cavazzoni, who is an expert in high performance, in technologies for high performance computing. We have heard from Nicola that this paradigm shift in materials research has been enabled by the steady increase in the computing power, the steady exponential increase in the computing power available to researchers in this area. And now we are at a time where several supercomputers capable of 1 billion floating point operations per second, 10 to the 18 floating point operations per second will be installed shortly in Europe. So new scientific challenges will be tackled thanks to these technological advances. And I would like to ask Carlo, which scientific domains will benefit the most from this hardware revolution? What are the technological challenges set out by this revolution, both in terms of energy consumption? These machines are monsters, they are energy born. So they set a challenge in terms of energy consumption, and also for the programming model on which scientific computing is based, and that is necessarily going to change to adapt to the evolving hardware technology. Please, Carlo.
Yes, first of all, me as well, I'm going not to follow a presentation, just a discussion. No, I see the slide. I don't know if they are going online, but we'll follow as Marzari, a simple conversation, not a presentation of slide. Yes. Just a few words about, let's say, I'm coming from an industry, Leonardo, which is an aerospace defense industry, one of the biggest in Italy. And well, an industry which is driven by the technology, by the use of technology. And today, technology cannot be, let's say, applied without a heavy usage of information technology devices or information technology software at large. But so this is true for most of the industry. In our case, we have the aim and the goal of let's say being also a driver for all the country. I mean, so we have been assigned the task of creating a leadership in Italy about the usage of computational technology in industry. And in particular, since we are an aerospace and defense, our problem are, let's say, among the most difficult to solve. Most of the problem, at a certain point, turn out to be one of the problems Nicola was speaking about, because there is all the problem related to how we can bring electricity to the planes and helicopter, not only to the car. And one thing is, let's say, moving a battery across a road where let's say, when you are, let's say, solve the problem of starting to move the vehicle, then you have the inertia and you do not have to fight gravity. When you have to fly something, you have to fight gravity. And the battery is a big problem today in order to be used in aerospace, because you have to lift much more weight with respect to the chemical fuel. Oh, this is one of the problems. About the supercomputer, Leonardo decided to, let's say, to install a supercomputer because well, the former CTO of Leonardo, which was a physicist as well, that is well known in Italy, is Roberto Cingolani, understood that many of the research and the engineering efforts were moving across still a path using physical facility. And there was a need to introduce more and more information technology and computation to go beyond what is possible with physical facility, and to speed up the technology evolution as well, using concepts today that are well known about data analytics and AI from one side, and digital twin on the other side. So we, inside the company, we use the supercomputer essentially to do two things. One is the data-driven modeling, and the other side is, data-driven simulation and model-based simulation. So these are two big family of things that we are using the computer for. So the first one is fed with data. So we use the data we have from our devices in order to improve them and to understand the model beyond the device. And in the other side, with model-driven, we are using modeling, so solve equation to predict the behavior of a certain device. to do that, obviously the computational power is critical because essentially when you are down to this road, the computational power is never enough. As Nicola was saying, the computer capacity is doubling every 16, 18 months, more or less, but the speed at which you are willing to use them is even faster than that. So we are continuously in the fact of computational power. Once you have embraced the problem of designing and perform simulation using data-driven or model-based kind of technology. So computers are becoming faster and faster, but how they become faster and faster, to come also to the second question of Stefano, essentially they were driven, this improvement of speed was driven by the famous Moore's law that states that the computer density the transistor density in a chip can double every 2 years, more or less, without, let's say, with the same power envelope. This was the Moore's law combined with another law, which was called the Denner scaling law, that allow, let's say, the computer to become from something that was used, that was able to perform a few million of operation per second to many billion of operation per second that can be done today, and especially during this scaling period since the beginning of year 2000, 2010. But then now this is all over, so there is not many more to scale using the improvement of the density without wasting power. And now the doubling of the computer power can continue, but paying a price. And the price we are paying doubling the computer performance is electrical power. So computers are becoming more and more powerful just because computationally powerful. From one side, still continuing the improvement in the electronic and in the scaling down of the component. Now we are at 5 nanometers, but you may very well know that the lattice parameter of silicon is alpha nanometer, more or less. And so sooner or later, we will have no more atoms to build a transistor inside the chips. And so we have to use architectural change. And one of the biggest architectural change was the GPUs of several years ago that tried to condensate much more the computer component, the active part of computer component, so those that perform operation in a smaller footprint. Now a modern GPU consumes up to 600 watt. So the GPU you're using to play Fortnite can have sucks the same power of the oven that you use to cook chicken, so more or less. So this is so if you play 5 hours in Fortnite using GPUs, you can as well open a shop for selling chicken, fried chicken. So how is that good? No, it's not that good because it's not really sustainable. But on the other side, what we are seeing and what we are also thinking is that, well, sometimes it's not that bad to invest all the energy you have to the more, let's say, the part of the organization that is able to exploit cognitive functionality like a supercomputer. So in nature, we have, let's say, many animals, but just one animal decided to invest most of the energy in the brain, and the man. So most of the other animals invest much energy in the muscle rather than in the brain, while the human body decided, the evolution decided to invest, and this was a winning winning, let's say, solution to invest more in the cognitive part of the organism rather than in the muscle. Something is happening also at the level of the evolution in the technology, because we are decreasing the investment in physical objects, and we are more and more investing in digital objects, so in the thinking part of the evolution. So it's not totally wrong to invest in the cognitive part rather than in the physical part. And if you take the let's say the market value of the company, you can quickly realize that most of the market value now goes to companies that do not produce physical goods, but produce virtual goods and solutions. So the computers are becoming more and more powerful, but at the same time, they are sucking more energy, and we have sooner or later to put a stop on that. But it's not that good that we move energy, not that bad that we move energy from physical goods to virtual goods. Last but not least, okay, last word about the programming model. All that came at a price. So the computers are becoming more and more powerful, but they are not becoming more easy to program, because the architecture are becoming more and more complex. And yes, you have to invest as well much more energy, human brain energy, in finding a good way and the proper way to code those algorithms into this large supercomputer that integrates many smaller components together in order to exploit the computational power. That's it.
Thank you, Carlo. So we postpone the discussion to the end of the first round of talks, and next in line is Ivano. So Ivano, all the progress and scientific advances, scientific and technological advances we have heard of from in the previous two talks have been enabled by programming models and hardware architectures that have been established in the 40s of last century, mainly by Alan Turing or John von Neumann, among others, also motivated by the war effort. So these traditional computing paradigms are unable to tackle problems whose complexity grows exponentially with the system size. Would you give us some examples of such intractable problems in the molecular and the materials sciences, and tell us how quantum computing will help us tackle them?
Okay. Thank you, Stefano. So I'm very happy to be here. I'll give you some say, overview on quantum computing and what are the possibilities with quantum computing. So Moore's law was already mentioned several times. We know that we experience this growth in computational power. So every 2 years was about doubling the number of transistors in our devices, and also consider that they become smaller and smaller, so then you can even have them in your mobile phone, in your pockets, right? And but the Moore's law, apparently, for physical limitations, will get to an end. And so in the future, you will not experience anymore such a growth in computational power of classical architectures. So this is why people start thinking how we can implement computations using another paradigm. And this guy that you have on the slide, so Richard Feynman, already in the 80s, he proposed to use quantum technology instead of classical technology to do many operations. And one of these is quantum computing. It's not the only quantum technology. So this is the era of quantum technology in general, and quantum computing is one of the possibilities that we have, but there is much more. There is also quantum sensing that is really very promising. But today I will focus mainly only on quantum computing. And as Stefano already mentioned, quantum computing has the potential to solve problems that cannot be addressed classically because of this exponential scaling in the number of resources. So I don't know if you are familiar with the exponential scaling, but this means that every time by increasing the number of degrees of freedom in your systems, think about the electrons in a molecule, the cost of your calculations will grow not polynomially, not linearly, but it will increase exponentially. Okay, so this is really a strong limitation. It was always there since the very beginning, but since scientists are smart people, they always found ways around that problem, right? Instead of looking at the exact solution of a given problem, people learn how to approximate the solutions. And therefore, for many years, we were able to describe molecules, materials, and many other challenging topics in science using classical computers. But again, this was possible because also of Moore's law that was providing better and better machines every year. I have to change my slides. Okay. So here I introduce you to a qubit. So you are used probably to classical bits of information that can only take values 0 and 1. So a qubit instead can take infinite values if you want. So we represent all the states of a qubit on this sphere. Each point on this sphere is a valid state that is a linear combination of state 0 and state 1. To describe this state, you need two real numbers, right? So for instance, the angle phi and theta in this chart. So this means, roughly speaking, that with a single qubit, you can represent two real numbers, two floating points. Okay. Thank you. So this was about a single qubit. Let's do this exercise now and see how much information we can store in n qubits. So let's go back to one qubit. In one qubit, I mentioned that you can describe all states that you can produce with one qubit just with two real numbers, A and B, that can represent 16 bytes of information. So now, if you move on, instead of only one, you start using 2, 3, and 4. So with 2, you need 4 real numbers to describe a state with qubits, which corresponds to 32 bytes of information. And to elaborate this information, a normal computer will take nanoseconds. And if you go already to 32 qubits, that is the maximum that roughly you can simulate classically, to describe a state made of only 32 objects or 32 qubits, you need 4 billions of coefficients, which corresponds about to 266 gigabytes of information. And to elaborate this information with an HPC, like the one that Carlo explained before, you would need seconds on your laptop. That's still feasible, you say, but because of the exponential scaling, now if you go to 64 qubits, now in this space, you can store essentially all the information that you have in the internet. Just doubling the number of qubits because of the exponential scaling, the amount of information that you potentially can store in this machine exceeds the size of the internet. So 74 exabytes of information, and then essentially, in order to elaborate this information, you would need years on a classical computer. And now if you go to 256 qubits, a number that we have already nowadays, even if they are noisy qubits, but I don't enter in these details. So now you would need, say, all the atoms in the universe to make a memory that can store this information. And there is no way that you can handle this information with a classical computer. And this is the potential that we have nowadays with this new technology that hopefully you will see it in the next 5 or 10 years. These quantum computers will be able to take advantage of all this potential. So quantum technology is a reality. I mentioned it already several times. So we have already quantum computers and we can use them. So one of the questions that I often get is, will a quantum computer substitute HPC, so high performance classical computing? My vision is no, at least not in the near future. What I see a quantum computer is more as an accelerator for some of the tasks that are very hard to describe with a classical computer. So I mentioned before, everything that is, say, hampered by the exponential costs performing the calculations. So this exponential scaling that I was mentioning before. So we will see more and more classical computer interacting with a quantum computer. So number crunching will be done. So all the arithmetics will be done on the classical HPC. And then these exponentially complex calculations will be instead given to the quantum processor. Here, what you have on the left-hand side is System 1, the first prototype quantum computer by IBM. So computers are there, and we can already start thinking about applications. So this is an important point. So the technology is available, but how to get out potential quantum advantage from a quantum computer is still an open issue. And therefore, we need to start now thinking how to reformulate all the problems that were at the basis of the classical calculation. So how to translate a problem into a software code and then execute on the classical computer. So now we have to do the same exercise, go back to the problem and reformulate it into a language that is suited for a quantum computer. It's a complete different paradigm. All what we learned before is cannot use it, but we cannot take what is known classically and simply translate into the quantum language. If you do that, you will lose all quantum advantage. So you need to rethink all the problems from scratch. This is why really active research in the community, how to do these steps, right? How to rethink everything from scratch in a way that we can make it suitable for calculations with a quantum computer. And not only us, but the entire community worked hard in different domains. So now we have quantum solutions for electronic structure calculations, molecular dynamics. We have for quantum machine learning, we try to speed up machine learning neural network using quantum works. We have also solution modules in high energy physics to solve problems like lattice gauge theory that has an exponential scaling to try to solve it classically. We have a quantum dynamics, but there are also class of classical problem like sampling in the configuration space. Famous one is the protein folding. That is, people here knows very well that it's very hard to solve it classically, even if the potential is classical and non-quantum mechanical. The number of configuration is exponentially large, and therefore the sampling is impossible with a classical computer. You can find the minimum of a protein, follow the forces, but there are some any problems because you can stuck in local minima. Since the landscape is so complex, it's very hard to get to the hold it global minimum potential energy. A quantum computer can search in this exponentially large space of all possible protein configurations and try to find in a convenient time the global minimum. So these are in a way speculations because we still don't have a solution for these kind of problems, but the potential is there. Need to get it out and put it in practice. So I want to finish with 2 slides on alchemy, because I mean the title of this colloquium is quantum alchemy, and since we had some work on quantum alchemy, on quantum computers, so I would like to give you a flavor of what it is about. So if you think about drug discovery, it's all about trying to find the molecule that has the properties of interest. For instance, a drug that binds a protein in a particular way so that it can stop the action on the function of the protein. Right? In order to do that, you need to sample. You need to sample the configuration space, try to change your internal degrees of freedom of the molecule in order to fit that given pocket. Or what you can do is also to change the chemical nature of your atoms. So the molecules are made of atoms, and you can do these alchemical changes. You replace a carbon atom with a nitrogen atom. And this is reminiscent to what in the 1400s was done in alchemy. So it's the science of transmutation, how to change a material into another one. And now we have the opportunity to do the same with a quantum computer. So we can start from a molecule and then modify the nature of the constituent atoms in a way that we get the function we are targeting. And this is my very last slide where I show, the setup in a quantum computer. So we replace the sketch from the 1400 with the one today, where here you see how we can investigate simultaneously a set of 6 molecules, the diatomic molecules. This is a proof of principle concept. So instead of solving the electronic structure for a single molecule, like we do with classical computers, we can put all the 6 molecules in a linear combination, in a quantum state, and then optimize not only for the electronic structure, but also for the nuclear composition, and find out the molecule that has the properties of interest. This is just to give you a flavor of what it will become possible in the future, hopefully, with quantum computing. Thank you.
So I would like to ask Elisa to conclude this first round of talks, giving us a perspective on how these avenues that have been described by Nicola, Carlo, and Ivano can be traveled, and what are the political and societal implications of these developments, and what would be the policies that would allow our country and our continent to keep the pace of these developments. We all know that information and communication technologies are dominated by US technologies, and since quite some time, China is also becoming a key player in this field. So It is the perception of many that Europe lags somewhat behind these global efforts. And I would like to understand with the help of Elisa, if this lagging behind is uniform, or if there are areas particularly relevant to scientific computing and materials modeling, which are our main concern, in which Europe, Italy and Europe actually has a leadership. And I would like to ask her to give us her appraisal of the status of the field, and tell us which initiatives, if any, are being taken to close this gap, and also to tell us something about her own experience in fostering and managing these initiatives. Please, Elisa. Answer a different one.
A bit more modestly, and rather than giving a universal vision of policies, just start by focusing on some specific aspects. Yes, I think it's true. Europe is lagging behind in terms of developing technologies, and this is for the first time very seriously now addressed. It's true that we are not autonomous, or how the way they formulate it, there's no sovereignty in the access to digital technologies. This is certainly for sure, and I think maybe later I can come to some of the possible evolutions. But one thing that I think it's appropriate to this context is identifying some aspects where I think it's fair to say that Europe is leading. So I think in terms of designing materials by computational condensed matter, but more, I would say more generally also in terms of some different aspects of software development for supercomputers, I think it's fair to say that Europe is leading. And it's a pleasure to tell you this here, because this is the home, as Stefano was mentioning, of a code which has now, I was looking at the data right now before coming here, the integrated number of scientific papers published on international journals that quote quantum espresso, as said, the publications showing quantum espresso is 15,000 approximately. About 1,000 are about, I can't remember how much was that in terms of yearly citations, but say about 100, I would say 1,000, sorry, papers per year published on international journals, which means teams who have worked for years using those tools are appearing. So it's really, and these are coming from many countries. There's about 100 countries where there are groups that use these, and they are not only in the US and China and India, but in Africa, in all continents, I would say. So it's really a leading effort, and it was developed essentially here with the help of a very large number of teams that contributed, but with a clear leadership based here. Now, maybe I shouldn't tell you, because I see in the audience many of the people who are leading this effort. Hidden over there is Paolo Giannozzi, but also in the front line is some of the people who really build the foundation, like Raffaele Resta. So I see many people here who actually we should really thank, because it's on the shoulders of this effort that many groups in the world have been using and progressing in computational material science. And of course, Stefano and all the others at CISA. So now, what I think it's interesting to ask how it happened. and also how we can preserve it and whether this can be advantageous in a more general sense. I think it happened because of one feature of the European education system where people are less pressed than in other countries, or have been less pressed than in other countries to produce short-term results, and have been lucky to have solid foundations in mathematics, physics, and basic sciences. Maybe others may have other opinions, but I think the fact that people have felt free to start a very long-term project with a vision of building something which doesn't show up in a very short term on a CV, at least in the beginning, but that really is an endeavor, is building an infrastructure, as was said before. This is something which has been a fortunate situation here in Europe, and the process that was chosen, I think, was extremely bold. It was of doing all this open source, meaning that the codes are available to anyone who can use and modify and transfer these codes in the broadest sense. And this means that a number of teams worldwide were able to contribute to writing those codes and to enriching the tools themselves. So now, what does this mean? It means that the growth of the codes sometimes have not been optimized in terms of, say, a computer scientist or a software engineer wouldn't consider sometimes that the best has been done to develop the codes, but at the same time, all the knowledge that was built through the years by scientific communities, which is something very concrete. So in a team, in my own or in CIS or many others, there are people who need to develop some particular calculation of property for their own thesis. They develop possibly the theory and sometimes a routine, a component of the code, and this is builds up. The advantage of this is enormous potential contributing to the effort. The disadvantage of this, which is where we have tried to contribute more recently, is that when you face the evolution of codes that it is dictated by new computer architectures, you really are faced with a bundle of components which you need to work on. And the effort to work on them is sometimes very difficult for a single group who should rationalize all this effort. So in a way, the advantage, which I think has been very important, puts also the whole system at risk, because codes can become obsolete if the technology changes, and you don't even need the change to quantum computers to make a strategy obsolete, a computational strategy obsolete. It's enough to consider GPUs. GPUs that Carlo was mentioning, they consume a lot of energy, but they also allow calculations in a supercomputer which are, say, 5-6 times often less energy consuming than the corresponding calculations performed without the GPUs. Order of magnitude, I'm not so. So you must nowadays use those technologies, because otherwise supercomputing centers are not able to enlarge their machines. So at the moment, this new technology is a must, and it's not developed because we, the scientists who try to model materials, wanted it, but just because there is a much broader market which has to do with AI, with graphic units for games or whatever, that develop those technology. Now we are faced to using them and to making our codes able to be efficient and just to work on the new category of machines. This is what is being done now. When we said this Max Center for Materials Design at the exascale, The effort was to say, let's make this effort in a way more professional. So let's try to modularize, rationalize the structure of the codes, and also let us try to modify the whole system in such a way that it can profit from the new technologies, and also design algorithms and applications that were not possible before. So with the new supercomputers, most of them are heterogeneous. We want to take advantage of them, and we want to make the codes able to run and run efficiently. So that there is this effort. This is something that has to be done collectively, and it's going on. It's difficult, but I think the fact that we are able to maintain this, not only the codes alive, but leading, is also due to the fact that there was a major effort in considering these codes as a value. So when I was a few years ago, not even so many, when I was developing my research, say designing some material for photovoltaics, what I typically had to do is in the motivation of a proposal for funding or in the introduction, the strength was what I'm doing immediately. And typically I would fund, or we all would fund, the work on the codes just on the side. We don't tell that we spend your money to develop the codes. We spend your money to develop an LED or a photovoltaic device, and then on the side we develop a code. Now I think there is much more awareness that the codes are themselves a value, and basically sometimes we do the opposite. So we work on developing the codes, and this is recognized, starts to be recognized as a value, including, and this is still a work to do, people. The bottleneck of all this effort, and most of the efforts in technologies, I would say, is in people, is in finding having the right people. And this means putting value also in the careers of the people who are doing this work, which doesn't translate on the next day on maybe some flashy result, but and sometimes it reflects in software, but on the long run is what enables a community to work. And I think it also starts to be shown and visible and evaluated. Now, so I think there is a vision, and there starts to be, and it has to be pushed, that developing codes, theory, codes, and software in general is as important and as critical as even including quantum information than developing the hardware. I hope that this will continue to be pushed, and there is some fight to do at the level of, for example, of Euro HPC in that direction. It's not at all obvious, but I think it's one of the components. The other component is, of course, developing supercomputers, and in our case, and technology in general. I think the political context as large as make it very clear that it doesn't make sense to have, say, globalization is okay, but giving up completely the development of a technology and also the development of the raw material. Yes, I'm also long, sorry. So the other part of developing hardware, and there is a lot of room also for the evolution of classical hardware, not only integrated with quantum, but I think classical hardware, especially in not only miniaturization, but also 3D type of devices and so on. So there will be more to go still with Moore's law, and I think we can also contribute to designing how this will be done in the future. Sorry if I was long.
Thank you, Elisa. It was extremely interesting. Thank you all. I think we are slightly short of time, so I would move directly to the last part of this meeting, giving the word of the audience in case where they have questions to pose to ask the speakers. And I think we have 10-15 minutes for a lively discussion.
Hello, thank you for the talk. I would like to ask, how does the security in crypto security, like the security in the cyber world, how does quantum computing treat this issue, and what can we do with the how is going to be a problem in the future?
I may start on that. So, in my view, there is no threat for, quantum computing breaking classical codes. We have already protocols that are quantum safe. So it's possible with very small changes to make our data safe from today, essentially. I mean, there is a discussion going on worldwide about to select the new standard, but there are many propositions how to make our data quantum safe. Now, what happened to the data that are already available in the internet and were not protected by a quantum safe cryptography? So one can think about somebody, some nasty guy, storing all the information on the internet now, and then one day when we will have a protocol that can crack the classical encrypting codes, then look retroactive what we have done in the past. This can be a threat, but it's the only one that I can see. And there is also something good in these new technologies, because we can use quantum technology to make our data more safe. So we can use quantum cryptography in the future. And the nice thing is that a quantum state, if you transmit quantum information, as soon as somebody in between will try to intercept the communication, it will cause a collapse of the state, and therefore you will be immediately aware about this threat. So I think I only see, say, positive effect also in cryptography by the quantum technologies. Sure.
Since we are a company that work on let's say, ensuring the security also crypto from the cyber security point of view, so you have to keep in mind that the weakest part of the chain is human, is not the technology. So 90% of the threat come from wrong behavior of human, not then there are obviously you have to ensure communication, you have to ensure everything, but from the point of view of the security, if the behavior of is your behavior that can threat the security of your data, so you have to be aware of what you do if you want to protect data and where you put your data, because there can be two things. Someone can someone can, let's say, read your data, but in the last 2 or 3 years, the most well-known attack and the most dangerous attack was not to read your data, but to keep you apart from your data. It is the ransomware. So the goal of the hacker is not to read your data, but is to prevent you to access your data. So in this, there is no quantum or digital or whatever. It's that your behavior not to reply or click on that link. So you have to be well aware of not only the technology, but also of your behavior if you want to secure your data and your, and your digital journey, let's say.
Okay, thank you very much for all of the interesting presentations. I have also a question concerning technology to Professor Ivano. You showed us the exponential growth of possibilities, what we can calculate on IBM computers, and so on is beautiful. But like, how about the exponential growth of amounts of qubits in your computer, in your quantum computers? Because like, I guess that 127 qubits is sufficient, but maybe it's better to have more. It would be better to have more.
Yeah, I mean, and indeed, here we need to open a big discussion about what we mean by qubits, right? So what we have now, this 127. Actually, this year we will go above 400 qubits. They are physical qubits, so they are noisy qubits. We are not talking about fault-tolerant quantum computing, so error-corrected quantum computing yet. But we have a roadmap to go to the 1,000 qubits soon, and then when you will have about 1,000 qubits, you can start implementing error correction. And then you need to link these logical qubits together, and you will have the potential to solve all the problems that I mentioned during my short talk. Yeah, you're right. I mean, 127 qubits, especially because they are noisy, they are not enough to solve new problems, but they are enough to learn. So we are in the learning phase. Okay, so we cannot yet, even if we have 127 qubits that in principle you cannot simulate classically, it's not that with this technology we can break a code or solve a problem that you cannot solve classically. But is now the right moment to start understanding how to, as I mentioned before, how to formulate our problems in a way that can be addressed with a quantum computer. And this is something that we can do now, right? And everybody, in my opinion, should participate to this challenge. Okay.
Hello, thank you very much for the talk. I would like to ask about the democratization of this kind of supercomputers, and especially the quantum computers, because I understand that they are owned by companies like IBM or whatever. And if, as you said, some of these new techniques could provide a new insight or good information for a certain research, how can they be accessed? I mean, are they accessible for everyone or only for those in those companies, or how would that work?
Thank you for the question. So it's true that there are some frontiers efforts that are made in companies, and as usual, and but it's also true that there's a major effort by these companies, and this is maybe somebody else can comment, to make available very early these technologies in order to boost the field. But I think as far as Europe is concerned, there is also a major effort that has happened recently, that is in buying supercomputers, and in the near future also quantum computers, to make them available to the community. There was already something like that before. The national supercomputers, which were typically owned by state institutions, by public institutions, were made work together in a consortium which was called PRACE, and you could apply for supercomputing time. And if your application is successful, then you get computer time, and even you get it for free. The effort that is ongoing now is to make this available. There's a big operation, which is this famous EuroHPC, still starting and not yet perfect, but which is co-funded half by the European Union and half by the countries, by national governments. And they buy computers. There is one in Italy, in Cineca, which is going to be starting very soon, is already being installed. Leonardo, it's called. And if you go on the website, you see already the machines physically installed in Bologna. There is one in Finland, one in Spain, in Barcelona, and there will be more in France and Germany. And then smaller machines distributed all over. For those, a quota, at least half, will be available for application. So suppose you want to do your own calculation, you write a proposal, and there is a scientific peer review process that examines your applications. Typically, there's a level which is evaluation of the scientific merit, and a level which is whether you really need that machine, and it's not just something that you can do at home with your with your laptop, and then you have access. So there is an effort in the US, for example. There is a similar effort by national laboratories and the DOE, Department of Energy. In Japan, there's a similar institution. So I think this is now happening. And one of the reasons is making things available. One of the reasons is also making communities grow. And I think that's an important component. Companies are buying their own supercomputers for dedicated reasons. For example, ENI, for simulating geophysical prospection, they have their own big supercomputer. Is one of the biggest, and they use it just for that purpose. Leonardo, I believe, needs to have their own because they have safety issues, security issues, and things or whatever. And I use
everything.
So in a way, there are also company-owned, but not necessarily the company. I mean, I think the availability of computer time is there now.
But it's also available for free. Small amount of qubit are available on the cloud for free.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, concerning the quantum side, so it's true that IBM is a company and they have to make profit about what they are doing. So it's not they are stealing a technology. They are investing in a new technology and propose it to the public. But quantum is special also for us. So most of the effort since 2016 is open source. So all the code to run quantum algorithms is called Qiskit, the IBM code, there are many others, are open source. So everybody can download, use it, and even contribute to the software. Concerning the hardware, since 2016, IBM has put on the cloud public access to our machines. Not all of them. So I think at the moment, the 27 qubit machines are open to the public with no cost. The larger machines are premium machines, and there you will need to pay. But there is a lot of things that you can do also with the one available on the cloud.
I just wanted to add a word because I think this democratization issue, the way you call it, is important. I think in the case of AI, this is much more critical. So open source there is not the common standard. And I think if I would have to focus on this type of issues, I would think we need to concentrate on that, and that's going to influence our future very heavily.
My gladness for the kind of attendance. Having lived in this city for 40 years now, I was expecting an audience of my age. I am very pleased to have proven wrong. Thank you for attending. Come back again when similar events will be held. Thank you very much.